Oh, wait, there you go. It says you record. Okay, cool. Okay, Carly's going to record for us. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the Vice-Prim Caucus. I hope you guys are excited, you're feeling relaxed. On the panel is myself, Jules, Knowledge, and Michael should be joining just now. I know he was writing a test, so he might be a bit late. Carly, your new Prim, is going to be present, but she will not be asking questions or making comments. She's just here because she deserves to be. So we're going to get into it straight away. Reminder that you have 10 minutes per session. You don't have to fill the 10 minutes. Once your question's up, it's up. If you are 2 questions from finishing and it's 10 minutes, I will tell you your 10 minutes is up. So we're going to start off with your general question. When it is someone's general question, you're going to leave the group. Jules will then tell you to come back and you'll be all sorted. If you do not hear a question, if you do not understand a question, you are welcome to ask again, ask someone to rephrase it. It's very relaxed. If you are in your 10-minute session, please will you turn your camera on so that people can see you and put a name to a face. So let me just get my clock. Banazi, if you can turn your camera on so long, and can everyone else please leave? Okay, cool. Please will you turn that thing off? Banazi, are you ready to start?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Just make sure your camera's on and everything's ready, and then I'm going to start with you. Okay, cool. So your standard question is, as Vice Prim, you will be attending cluster meetings with your Prim. What does cluster mean to you, and how will you promote cluster to the house?
Okay, so what cluster to me is a community that is extended from Aristia. So in Aristia, we have, our little community and our girls, our women. Cluster is really great because it extends to, for example, Irene and Yendrach and other communities like that. And I think it's really great because we get to see things from other perspectives, especially in Res. I find it so interesting and really great when we get together with other communities in our cluster to see how they do things, how we can improve. And, it's also nice to see how they learn from us. So I think cluster is so important to expand your community and expand your horizons and just getting to know how things work outside of, your little community of Aristia.
Okay, perfect. Jules or Knowledge, do you have a question before I move to the house questions?
Not yet.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to just move straight to the house questions. So, Banazi, the question is, you spoke a lot about failure in your speech. Broadly, do you consider success and striving for it as an important thing for a Vice Prim? If not, why not? And if so, in what way will you strive for success in your term?
I think it's always important to strive for success, but what you need to remember is that failure is inevitable. And also, success is great, but with failure, you're always going to learn something. And that is why I spoke so much about failure, because I don't think anyone's ever really learned anything from being successful all the time. And for me, my failures have turned into my biggest success. So for me, striving for success doesn't mean, always wanting to do the best. And of course, you want to do the best. But for me, success is learning from your failures, taking responsibility for your failures and mistakes, and knowing that, it doesn't make or break you. Your failures will not break you. They will always help you. You may not see it now, but you will see it somewhere down the line. And I just think it's so important to realize that it's so sorry, but I heard something. It's so important to realize that your failures, they do help you.
And do you feel that your attitude towards failure would change being in a prominent position when failure could result in something not so great for the rest of the house, yet a lesson for you, since it's only going to benefit you and it's going to be detrimental to the rest of the house?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of the question?
I said that will your attitude towards failure change, considering when you're in a haka, your failure might be a lesson for you, but could be detrimental for the house?
No, I don't think so. Absolutely not. I think failure is important for absolutely everyone. And, when your failure affects other people, I think then you just have to, I think the most important thing for me is also considering the people around me. So when you think of failure and how your failure could be detrimental to other members in the group, you have to just realize that it's not just you. And that's part of what being a leader is, realizing that it's not just you in this position. Your decisions don't only affect you. So I think failure is still very helpful, and my attitude definitely wouldn't change. But what would change is, just acknowledging and realizing that there are other people around me and I need to take them into account as well.
Okay, thank you, Benazi. I'm going to carry on with another house question. What is your vision for Aristia?
Okay, so my vision for Aristia is to create a community where ladies feel welcome, because I know so many girls and ladies, they come in and they're scared and they're alone and they don't know, they don't know left from right in that situation. And it's so scary. And I mean, that was me in first year. In my first year, I walked into the BA building and I was like, I don't want to be here. This isn't my place. And my vision for Aristia is making it a place where everybody feels that they have a space. And there's so many ways to do that in terms of events and just, personally taking care of someone and being approachable in that, a lot of people say, I want to be approachable, but I think the most important part of approachability is going and approaching someone yourself. So I think it's just that personal, care and, concern to other people that will make people feel welcome. And that's what's most important to me in Aristia.
Perfect. Jules, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, Benazi. So I just want to ask you mentioned about events and inclusivity. Do you have any practical ideas of how you can make current events more practical, or even bring in new events to make it not more practical, more inclusive, or to bring in new events and make that more inclusive?
Sorry, you lagged a bit in the first part of the question. Would you mind repeating it?
So you spoke a lot about inclusivity now and events. Do you have any ideas how to make old events more inclusive or bring in new inclusive events?
So yeah, there are many sort of facets to this. You have inclusivity in terms of financial inclusivity, and then an example of something that happened this year during welcoming. So we had a little event during welcoming with the Marty's Beer Tasting Society, where we all got to taste beer, and obviously it was non-alcoholic, but there were a few Muslim girls who didn't feel that, they could take part in that event and they left early. And I think it's little things like that. So making sure that events are, attainable for everyone, and also, newer events, things like we have quiz nights and things like that, but making something more inclusive financially, for example, instead of having, high stance, it costs a lot. So maybe having other different events, at, for example, Mare Park, where you just, have a little kaya with the girls and things like that. So yeah.
Thank you, Benazi. I'm going to give you another house question. You speak a lot about your weaknesses in your speech. Can you please give us some of your strengths and how they will help you in the Vice-Prim role?
Yeah, so yeah, I think the reason why I mentioned some my weaknesses so much is because I think they help a lot, but some of my strengths. So I know I like to say this, my planner is my best friend. My organizational skills are pretty, on par. I feel like I'm a really empathetic person, and I feel like I can connect with people. I'm also very assertive. So yeah, I don't allow myself to be walked over. So yes, I feel that those are some of my strengths that I could use in a leadership position.
Okay, I've got one final question to round up your session. You said that you often speak your mind. When you have a situation with another member where you do not agree with what they have done or their actions, how will you handle that situation? And then I'll ask, sorry, Knowledge, I'll ask your question afterwards.
Okay, so for me, one of my biggest problems, I'd say, is separating, work from personal lives, just to the extent where I sometimes hurt people's feelings. And it's something that I am consciously working on. When somebody comes to you with a work situation and, says to you, this and this is happening, I like to think, if this person was coming to me as a friend, what would I say to them? Because I do consider myself a very empathetic person. So if somebody comes to me with anything, I think if this person was coming to me as a friend, just to listen and to support them, what would I say? Because I am here to listen, I'm here to support, I'm here to encourage. So yes, I think just being mindful of what you say and just saying it with kindness, because kindness to me is everything. I live my life by it. It's one of my most important values. So yeah, I handle it with kindness.
Okay, thank you. Knowledge, would you like to squeeze in your question?
Yeah, my question, it's based on one of the key elements of being a vice prim is to ensure that discipline is actually being enforced in a team. Hypothetically speaking, let's say the prim gives you problems. How would you deal with that situation? At the same time, ensuring that how you deal with the situation doesn't put the respect and the dignity of the prim into disrepute.
So, as a vice prim, part of your job is dealing with, conflict and sort of disciplinary action, or not action, but, so I think it's important. I mean, like I said before, kindness is very important. So dealing with it with kindness, and also, watching what you say to the person, and also just, I think being kind is really just so important. And also that's where being assertive comes in. So, when you're being assertive, you got to realize, okay, this is where we're at and this is where we have to go, and we have to get there some way or another. So, dealing with that person in the kindest way possible, and, saying, okay, this is how it is, this is where it has got to go, and this is what we have to do to get there. But in the same way, just being very respectable and kind, and I can't emphasize being kind enough. So yes.
Okay, thank you, Banazi. Your caucus is officially over. So the next up is going to be Dana. Banazi, you can stay on, it's no problem. Just turn your camera off. If the other candidates can please leave for the first question, and then Jules will invite you back. Dana, are you ready?
Should I put on my camera? Yes, I am.
Yes, please.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so your first question, which is the standard question, is as Vice Prim, you will be attending cluster meetings with your Prim. What does cluster mean to you, and how will you promote cluster to the house?
Ooh, okay. I like this question. I think, okay, I would be really excited to go to cluster meetings, because I realize up until now I haven't been particularly involved in a cluster. I think the importance of the cluster is to get to know different people in your residences in your cluster. It's another community that you have, so it's not just your PSO, because I know sometimes you don't feel like you necessarily fit in with people at your PSO. I know some of my friends feel like they don't fit in at their PSO, so it's easy for them to still have that kind of community within the cluster itself. I think easy ways to involve the cluster is in, like I said, I think I said it in my speech, in our in small activities we have together. I realize that it is already, if we have quiz nights, some of the boys from PICA will come or whatever. So it's already that kind of involvement from other groups. So we can just have that within the cluster. It doesn't have to be the whole cluster. It can just be like 2 or 3 of the residences and PSOs or whatever can be together, and it's easy if you market it that way towards newcomers because they enjoy the socials of welcoming, and this is just another opportunity for socials.
Okay, perfect, Dana. I just want to quickly check from the panel if anyone wants to ask before I ask from the house. Okay, cool. I'm going to move straight on to house questions. So you spoke about representing the queer community within Aristia in your speech. So what does representation and inclusivity mean to you?
Is this in a general sense or particularly in the queer community sense?
I would say in a general sense, but if you would like to give examples using the queer community, that'd be fabulous.
Okay. I think, like Banazi said, inclusivity is just, personally, I think it's to create a space where everyone feels comfortable and welcome and not like a little off, like she said with the Muslim girls who didn't feel like they were necessarily welcome there because they wouldn't partake or wouldn't participate. So it's just creating a nice, comfortable environment. And I think particularly when it comes to the queer community, I remember when my first like welcoming week for me, I saw a girl and I was like, oh, that's definitely someone in the queer community, and immediately felt like I had bonded with someone already, and it was very easy. And then, like I said, about maybe creating a small safe space within Aristia itself, because I know for a lot of queer girls it's difficult because there is certain stereotypes that go with that, and I think it's just about making them feel like loved and accepted, and if they would prefer that there would just be confidentiality.
Okay, perfect. Completely understandable. I'm going to move on to your next question. Given a situation in which you can't please everyone, as is the case with most situations, how will you handle your people-pleasing nature to ensure a good outcome is still met?
Okay, I think it is important to remember that not everyone will be happy in every situation, no matter how badly I want that to be the case. I think it's just about getting to a middle ground. In any situation, you just need to get to a middle ground. If someone doesn't agree with me, then they don't agree with me, but it's important to understand why, and it's important to try your best to come to a middle ground so that everyone is at least satisfied and not necessarily happy with the outcome, but they're like, okay, this will do. And if they are unhappy, apologize and be like, that's okay, it's okay if you're unhappy, but unfortunately explain the situation, this is how it is, it's just unfortunately one of those things.
Perfect. You speak about being comfortable in the supportive role, but are you ready to step up or being thrown into the spotlight should your prim be overwhelmed or overloaded?
I think this is again where I think with a lot of people with anxiety, as soon as someone you care about, someone you support, isn't capable of stepping up, it is very easy for me to then be like, okay, it's fine, I'll do it. It's like you're not wanting to ask a waiter for a bottle of ketchup, but for yourself, but you're fine doing that for your friend. I think for me, it's the same in this situation. It is, if they can't do it, then it's fine, then I'll do it. It's totally fine. Me, it's okay, I'll do it.
Okay, that was actually a brilliant answer, Dana. I have to give it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I want to ask something a bit more specific to Carly. What qualities do you think that you have will help you be a Vice-Prim to Carly specifically?
Okay. I think the way I see, I don't know Carly too personally, which is a shame because I think she's really lovely. But I see her dynamic that she has with Marichen, and that does help me a little bit. So I think for me to help Carly, I would want to be honest with her at all times, and I would appreciate the same from her, because there's no point in us moving forward if we're not honest with each other. I think it's also important to know exactly what her goals are, what she wants to achieve, and to see if any of our goals line up really nice, or there's any way we can try and have the same goals, because then it will be a lot easier to work together if I fully understand where she's coming from. And it's always like that. If I understand where you're coming from, it makes it so much easier for me to be able to support you and get to where you want to go.
Okay, perfect. I just want to check from the panel if anyone has a question. Yes, Jules.
So Dana, in your speech you mentioned safety a lot. So we know you're passionate about that. So do you think safety needs to be created and maintained online?
Oh, definitely. Like I remember when I was younger, they would always talk about like you don't give out your password and you don't. It was mostly about giving out your password, but I think considering that the people we deal with are a lot older, and that comes with a whole new set of challenges. Like something I've recently been learning more about, which absolutely horrifies me, is revenge porn. And I think it's important to educate girls about that kind of thing. Like, listen, these are your rights. Like in this situation, like if someone is not allowed to do that to you, because I don't think everyone always knows that. Like it's very easy to be like, ooh, send a little spicy picture, but you don't know the repercussions that can come with that. So it's important to educate them in that sense, and also safety as in like mentally, like people on the internet and on Instagram, like maybe they look like that, but you know, Facetune is a very big thing. And sometimes I look at pictures and I'm like, oh, I don't look like that. But that's not necessarily a realistic standard, and people need to know that, especially like girls still kind of in their formative years.
Thank you, Dana. Another question from the house is, since one of the main roles of Vice-Prim is mediation, how do you handle conflict?
So I've been dealing with conflict a lot more recently because I have two sisters and we together, you're in a small space, so you will have conflict. And it's the same sense that I have to deal with conflict when I'm like teaching practically at schools, which unfortunately now I don't get to do, but still it's the same idea. It's just listening to both parties. It is it's very easy to put your own opinion in there. Like if there's one party that you disagree with, you're going to be biased. But it's important to try and remember that both parties, like, you don't want to fight. It's not nice to fight. So I guess my job as a mediator is to be like, what do you want? What do you want? How can we solve this and get to what we all of us want the same thing, is just to solve the conflict. So it's just then about working through that and finding a middle ground.
Okay, Dana, I've got one more question for you. I know it's been a bit of a fire round with your questions, but you're handling it brilliantly. What does value-based leadership mean to you?
Okay, this is interesting. So the high school that I went to was actually value-based. So I've learned a lot about that being in a school like that, especially considering that I was in a residence where there's a lot more responsibility that goes with that. And one of the biggest things that they always spoke about is responsibility, that it is me trusting you enough to know that you will be responsible, being confident in your own leadership, being confident in being like, this is how it should be done, and then trusting people to have that kind of respect for you to just do the right thing. And it's also about, I guess in a school context, it's about educating people correctly to know that, to be confident enough and to know you did a well enough job that people will listen to you and follow you without having to have a disciplinary system.
Okay, perfect, Dana. Well done on your caucus. You are officially done, so you can turn your camera off and and just relax. Sorry, that was your alarm. So you are welcome to stay on the chat. Next up is Coco. So Ewa and Josh, can you guys leave for that first question, please? Okay, Coco, are you ready?
Hi, yes, I am almost ready. Sorry, my laptop is just sort of going through something. I've turned my camera on. Oh, okay, there.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to start your time now. I'm going to start with your standard question that everyone got. It was, as Vice-Prim, you will be attending cluster meetings with your Prim. What does cluster mean to you, and how will you promote cluster to the house?
Well, personally, for me, cluster is really the community in which Aristia falls in and the people who are there to support us. So I think the relationship that we have with other houses, such as Hauswichter and Eendrag, and Irene and Sonop and Vesta, are very important because these are the people who are there to support the girls and the people who the girls in Aristia are going to be getting to know most. So it's the bigger community that then sets how the tone for how our house is going to be. Sorry, I think I've missed a bit of the question. Would you please mind saying it again?
So the end of the question is, what does cluster mean to you, which I think you answered, and how will you promote cluster to the house?
Okay, so I think a lot of the cluster events are great, but they're not promoted so well. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we don't necessarily tell most of our house and the new members what events we'll be having in like a long enough time. So I think if we were able to tell people about the cluster events before they happened, more people would be willing to attend.
Okay, perfect. Coco, your camera is not working. It's not the end of the world. I just wanted to let you know I'm gonna have to go on with the caucus, but I just wanted to inform you.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with a house question before I take panel questions. So, Coco, you have said that you will not be staying in the hub next year. The main role of a vice-prim is internal relation, as in within the HARCA. From the experience of living in the house for 2 years, the tension and conflict can mount within the actual hub. So, how are you going to fulfill this role of vice-prim if you're not living with everybody?
Well, personally, I think when you're welcomed into the Haka house, you're able to spend a lot of time there. I've seen crescendo girls do it. I've seen members like Carly before she was vice prim. She spent a lot of time in the house, although she wasn't staying there. So I think spending time outside of when I'm doing my classes in the hub with the girls, being on the same group as them, being able to spend so much time with them when I'm doing work will also mean that I'll be in tune with the house as much as anyone else who sleeps there. I think essentially, if I live down the road, which is where I do live, I am literally less than a 2-minute car ride away. So I'll probably be spending a lot of time there outside of where I sleep.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the panel? Yes, knowledge.
My question is based on your time management. You just mentioned now you live down the road and there's traveling, you have your own studies and everything. So it's based on how good is the time management in relation to team management and ensuring that everyone is well disciplined, they well manage their time and they still fulfill their role as your constituents.
Well, I think this actually works a lot off of what happened when I was a mentor. I was a mentor 2 years ago. And when I applied, I actually had time management as one of my biggest problems. And I think being within the house and serving and all the leadership courses that I was then allowed, I learned how to balance a lot of things. So I realized that sometimes it's not necessarily always going to go according to plan. So it's easier to just live in the moment. And in that case, I think I'll be doing a lot of studying in the hub and spending a lot of time when I should probably be doing schoolwork, doing doing Aristia work. And as Summer said, sometimes things are gonna slip and I might be lacking in my schoolwork or I might be lacking in my Aristia work, but I'm planning to prioritize everything that is my duty before I prioritize leisure.
Thank you, Coco. I'm going to ask you a question from the house. You say in your speech that you would be Aristia's first Black Vice Prim. However, this is merely a title. What more will you do with your position in terms of inclusivity and representation?
I think firstly, I'd like to address that when I say I want to be Aristia's first Black Prim, I am Vice Prim, sorry. What I want to mostly do is I want to be a figurehead for people of color who have coming into Stellenbosch and are hearing on the news how we are extremely racially biased, how people of color are not prospering, whereas if you see it for yourself that people of color are in positions of quote unquote power, then it's more likely that the house will feel comfortable enough to be there as people of color. In addition, I would like to install initiatives such as allowing people to speak languages that aren't only English and Afrikaans. I think that we've got 9 national languages, and the university itself has included Xhosa more. So if we were able to, during orientation, say some things in Xhosa just as we say some things in Afrikaans, or allow people to mingle and see that there are other people who speak different languages, then it would encourage inclusivity within the house.
Thank you, Coco. Great answer. Jules, do you have any questions before I move on? Yes, Jules.
In your speech, you said you want to create a network of Aristia girls in and off, like on campus and off of campus. Do you have any ideas how you want to do that?
Yes, thank you so much for this question, Juliandri. I've actually been very excited with this idea. So my idea is coming from what I've seen happen with organizations such as sorority houses, which I think are rather in par with PSOs, where I feel that an organization has been created where women who are alumni, and I know alumni is the platform of the Prim, but I think being able to create more of a connection, hopefully while utilizing the social media and the website that we've already got thanks to the previous year, between newcomers, current Aristia, and old alumni. A connection needs to be created where people can talk, where probably alumni of the past can maybe sponsor new students, maybe the younger students can go and have knowledge that there are people out in the workplace that are Aristia and therefore are their sisters and can help them. Additionally, I think we need to connect more of the seniors with the newcomers, and doing that through maybe a welcome brunch like the one that is done on Sunday, where everyone is invited, so that the first years and the seniors can get to know each other better. Thank you.
Thank you, Coco. I'm going to give you another question from the house. As Vice Prim, you are at time your Prim, now Carly's confidant. How will you ensure that trust is at the core of your relationship?
I think that Carly and I have been able to work together before, and building on that relationship will be much easier because we've already gotten to know each other a bit. In terms of trust, I think honestly, there's nothing I could do to make her trust me other than what she'll see throughout the actions and what we'll be going through. I think a lot of bonding will be necessary, and I'll have to prove myself as time goes along. But I don't think there's a specific action that I could make or do so that she'll trust me.
Okay, thank you so much, Coco. That is the end of your caucus, so you can also relax. Again, you can stay on along with the other candidates. You are up next, so Joss, can you please leave Quick Sticks? Okay, Yua, are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let me just start my timer. And if you can turn your camera on.
Is it not on?
Okay, it's on. It's just my laptop. Don't worry. Okay, so your first standard question is, as Vice Prim, you will be attending cluster meetings with your Prim. What does cluster mean to you, and how will you promote cluster to the house?
I think Cluster is an amazing support system within Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch is so vast and so big that it is impossible to try and connect everybody. Cluster is just this wonderful little support system that you get to have to chat with other prims and other vice prims to just hear how they're doing things, how they're managing certain things. Like for instance, caucus in lockdown. So honestly, I just think of it as a great support system, and also to have the Aristia goals branch out to more aspects of Stellenbosch, more people, to see what's going on in Rays, to meet different PSOs of different people, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Are there any questions from the panel? Okay, cool. I'm going to go on. If there are more questions, then they will just raise their hand. So, Ewan, a question from the house was, you spoke about making Aristia more financially inclusive. Can you please elaborate on your 10 Rand plan?
Okay, so basically the idea, I'm just going to quickly repeat the start part so everyone's just on the same page. So it basically consists out of every time you buy a ticket for an event, the person receiving your money, if it's in cash, then obviously the person sitting there with the pen, and if it's EFT, then they will ask on groups like you can donate an extra 10 Rand. If it's an EFT, it'll have to be part of the referencing, obviously, otherwise it'll get lost. And in person it will have to be like an extra column, so like everyone knows that it has to go there. And then it's basically just about getting more money from the goals to the goals. So that's basically the idea of it. It's not to fall back on what's the financial, the budget of Aristia. It's not to fall back on that the whole time, but to focus on the fact that there are Aristia goals. We want more people to attend our events, and we don't want people to feel excluded because of financial reasons. And like I said in my speech, I truly do believe that the people who can all the events have an extra 10 Rand to spare every time they do buy a ticket. So yeah, does that answer the question enough?
Yes, that's perfect. It's a brilliant idea. So your next question is, obviously Carly and I were not friends before we became Prim and Vice Prim, and it worked really well for our dynamics. Do you think it is an advantage that you and Carly are not besties straight off?
I do think it could be an advantage. I think me and Carly both have a good we can distinguish very well between professionalism and friendship, and I think the fact that we get to focus on the professional part first is actually an advantage, because we can build our friendships through that, while still knowing that from the get-go this is like our job and we have to be professional about it, and the friendship kind of comes second per se. Yeah.
Perfect. Jules, any questions before I move on?
Not yet, you can move on.
Okay, no worries. So Ewa, how are you going to facilitate relationship building and bonding within the HARCA?
So as like relations manager of as Vice Prim, obviously it is my job to make sure that everyone is happy and everyone is bonding, and I think the only way to do that is by making sure that the girls spend time with each other. I think time is the only way that you can get to know each other. Obviously bonding sessions would be great, but I think it's the informal things that actually make you bond. I don't think it's the scheduled, we're going to have a chat at 4 p.m. kind of thing that makes everyone open up. I think it's the let's go get coffee, who can I make for kind of thing that really like forms a bond within the house. And obviously I'm talking completely out of lived in the house, but that's just how I envision it to be. And yeah, so honestly just quality time and making sure everyone feels included, not like, yeah, just making sure everyone feels included. Yeah.
Okay, so now you speak about spending quality time, but with Corona going the way it has gone, time is not necessarily going to be an option. So what is your plan B to bond?
A good question. So while I still with the HARCA, a lot of like Zoom, just casual meetings, things like house party, just having quiz nights, having those types of things where like obviously the VARCO has meetings and like there are like formal things that need to happen, but to focus that just being the only time we spend together, making sure there are informal things where we can laugh together and make jokes and honestly just enjoy each other's company. So you're just focusing on the online communication more, because that's kind of all we can do at this point.
Okay, no, perfect. It's very valid. There's not much more you can do. I'm going to give you a situation that Carly and I faced. I'd like to know how you would then handle it. So you're in a cluster meeting and your prim voices her grievances regarding a certain issue affecting your community. The convener then looks to you to speak. What is your plan of action? Frozen. I think you might be frozen.
My phone is, I don't know, it's I think I can see you again. Would you mind repeating the question? I'm so sorry.
No, it's no worries. So I said I'm going to give you a situation Carly and I were in. So you're in a cluster meeting. Your prim voices her grievances regarding a certain issue. The convener then looks to you to speak. What is your plan of action?
So I think my first plan of action, obviously as Vice-Prim, my job is to be the supportive role of the Prim. So I think the most important thing is just to support whatever she said, not to make a 180 and go in a different direction. I think the most important thing is supporting whatever she said, maybe giving more points, more reasons for why it should be a grievance, why it should be looked at, if I have my own opinions about it. But honestly, just number one is just go against.
Okay, perfect. I did hear that, so don't panic. It was a bit crackly, but I think we got the gist of it. I'm going to no, it's okay. I'm going to ask you. Sorry, Jules, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So as Vice-Prim, you might be able to get another portfolio. So what portfolio would you want to have?
I think a portfolio that I would love having is culture hardcore. Maybe it's because I wasn't sad is such a big part of my life now, but I think definitely culture hardcore. I've always been the kind of the culture vulture. I never played above C team in any sport, so I've always had to kind of focus on the culture part. So yeah, I think my passion definitely lie in the culture. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to ask you one more question and then you are done. I'd like to know, what are some of your weaknesses as a leader and how will you overcome them with your term as Vice-Prim?
Okay, so we actually spoke about this in the so one thing I struggled with as a mentor in a leadership position was the fact that I had this idea of the leader I wanted to be and not the leader that my mentees needed. And I think just to focus on, I know I have to focus on what people need and not what I think people need. So that's definitely one thing that I know I should focus on, and my term as mentor, I think, has prepared me for that.
Okay, that was a brilliant answer. Thank you, Yua. You are done with your caucus, so you can also turn your camera off, relax. Joss, you are up next, please. Okay, Joss, let me know when you are ready and I will start your time.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Joss, your standard question is, which I cannot find because my page, oh, here you go. As Vice-Prim, you will be attending cluster meetings with your Prim. What does cluster mean to you and how will you promote cluster to the house?
I think cluster is very important because even though there are a lot of races and PSOs on campus, but having cluster makes it feel more homely to me, just having a smaller amount of residents and PSOs involved, and you can kind of become closer to people within your cluster. I think it facilitates better relationship building, and that usually you feel like you're connected in some way, being part of the same cluster. I think that's very special. And yeah, I think that this could really encourage the girls to support the idea of cluster.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to ask a house question before I ask the panel. So, Josh, obviously you lived with Carly this year and you are friends with her. So how are you going to draw the line between friendship and a professional relationship with you and Carly?
Yeah, Carly and I have become very good friends, and I did mention this in my speech, and Carly has also mentioned this, that we both have a very definite line between friendships and haka. I think that we're going to have to set boundaries from the get-go, but in a way, I don't think that this is a bad thing, because having that friendship, we kind of already have that trust between each other, and that could come in very handy working together. I think that we both also have the capacity to be professional when needed, as Carly also mentioned in her caucus, and I can be professional. I can be trusted to be professional. So I really don't think that it would be too much of an issue for us.
Okay, awesome. Good answer. Does anyone from the panel have a question before I move on? Okay, I'm going to move on with house questions, Josh. How do you think you can go about investing more into leadership development in Aristia?
So that was a very big part of my speech, and it is my vision for Aristia to see that leadership development, because through this you will ultimately be growing together as an Aristia community, encouraging more leadership development. And firstly, I would want it to be available to almost the whole house, more committees. I think it's very much focused on the mentors in haka, but I think all the committees in Aristia should have the chance to attend these leadership development sessions, because even if they don't go into a leadership position, it ultimately prepares you for life. I think that's really important. Another way is, Carly also mentioned this, and I also had this idea, and that is through courageous conversations. And I think through that, you learn from each other, you're educating each other, and you're growing together. And that also builds leadership values or skills. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to move on to another house question. Someone in the haka comes up to you with a complaint about your prim. What is your plan of action?
Firstly, I would take the haka member aside, and I would have a chat with them, sit down and have a chat with them, go to the root of the issue and see if it is personal or if it is professional. I think that if it's a personal issue, then there often won't be good motive for it. But if it's professional, it will be taken a lot more seriously. And even if it is personal, it'll be taken seriously, just in a different direction. Yeah, getting to the root of the problem is the best way to go, and trying to put myself in their shoes to see why they feel that way and where they're coming from is important. And from this, from understanding exactly what that member feels, I can then speak with her about a plan of action, go to my prim, speak with her about what has happened, and facilitate a discussion between the two of them, and kind of mediate with them to find a solution to go forward.
Thank you, Josh. Jules, any question before I move on? Yes, Jules.
Yeah, so Josh, as Vice-Prim, your presence and focus is needed within the house. So how are you going to prioritize within your life between socializing, academics, and haka?
So I was very much tested with this in the beginning of this year. I think everyone who lived in the house with me saw this, and I think it was very valuable. I learned so much because of it, and I'm grateful. I mean, it was quite terrible at one point, but I really I saw the value of having a balance. And I think that going forward, I am much more strict in terms of keeping a timetable and sticking to it, cutting down on social times, making room for haka and work, and prioritizing the two when I need to. As you have said, Summer, sometimes haka work is going to be the priority, and I understand that. I'm fully ready for that. So I think I've come to a place where I understand what is ahead of me, and that should really help me going forward to plan.
Okay, perfect, Joss. What I want to know is what qualities do you have that you think complement Carly specifically?
I thought about this a lot actually, because even though Carly and I are very similar, we seem very similar. She did also mention in her caucus that she can come across as more laid back, and I think that in this way I am less laid back than she is, and I think that this can be a really, really good combination. And in saying that she's laid back, it has no impact at all on her capabilities and her dependability and her commitment, just rather her presence. And I feel like having that other presence myself, I can be a little bit more structured in a way, if I can put it that way. And I think that this could be really beneficial.
And Joss, I'm going to ask you a similar question I asked Dana. Obviously, you're comfortable in the supportive role, but how are you going to feel when Carly's overwhelmed and overloaded and she asks you to step up and step into the spotlight and take over that prim role?
I think that this is also something I've thought about, and I mentioned in my speech as well, I have grown so much since last year when I joined the RSDO community, and seeing my growth has made me realize my potential. And stepping into the spotlight, if you had told me this a year ago, I would have been terrified. But as you say it now, I am not at all. I am confident in myself and my capabilities, and I know that going forward, I will be able to put myself out there. And in this way, it might be nerve-wracking, but it is going to help me grow and develop my leadership abilities even more.
Perfect. Knowledge, I just want to check if you have a question. Please note Knowledge is jumping between caucuses, so if he doesn't answer, he's answering another question. I just want to triple check. Okay, no worries. Joss, we asked in your applications, and I'd like you to say it out loud. What is one thing you want to keep about Aristia, and what is one thing you want to change about Aristia?
So I'm going to start off by what I want to change, and that was kind of to do with the leadership development not being open to the rest of the house. I think it's a really, really important thing, and I really feel that other girls should have the opportunity to grow as much as those in leadership positions want to. And I think that was the thing I wanted to change. And the thing I wanted to keep the same, I can't remember what I said in my application. I'm going to go with what's in my heart. I think that the community of Aristia is so powerful, and I would keep the close relationships we have with each other, the Haka being approachable. The fact that I was able to become friends with some of you is a testimony to that. And I think that's definitely something that I would keep and is really, really important, especially to the first years, to make them feel comfortable and more at home.
Okay, Joss, I'm going to give you one more question and then you are done. If you were given another portfolio, because you will be as Vice-Prim, what portfolio would you personally want it to be?
So in addition to the Vice-Prim standard portfolios, I would really like the portfolio of secretary. I feel that I'm very organized and I could do it well, and I have previously served in a secretarial position in another organization. I think I could do this really well. I do have a concern with it being too much for me though, in addition to my Vice-Prim responsibilities. And in this case, I would really love to get the portfolio of social impact. I know this is also a big portfolio, so my backup for that is to have the haste dance. I think that I would really enjoy that. There is a lot of planning that goes into it, which I am good at, and I think that I could execute it really well.
Okay, perfect, Josh. You are done. I'm sure it's been a long wait for everybody. Thank you so much, guys, for attending the caucus. I really appreciate you all taking the time. You all had a brilliant caucus, and now you can just relax. I've recorded the session. It will be uploaded, and the girls will then vote at 8. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much. You too.